If you ate Brussels sprouts before, say, 2000 or so, these balls might ring some bells. Unfortunately, they were bitter, mushy, stinky, terrible. But these days, people are crazy for sprouts. Producers can barely grow enough to keep up with demand. What happened? And what can it tell us about how to make our sprouts shine? This is Minute Food. So 2 main things have happened when it comes to Brussels sprouts. And yes, there is an S hiding in that name. But to understand them, you've got to understand the chemistry going on in these weird little balls. Brussels sprouts contain compounds called glucosinolates, or GSLs. In nature, these compounds act as a chemical defense system to fend off pests. And since we humans have some sensory stuff in common with those pests, we find some GSLs to be unpleasantly bitter. Luckily, those bitter compounds break down as we prep and cook them. But unluckily, the sulfur-packed volatiles they break down into can be really stinky. They're some of the same compounds released by rotting eggs, sewers, and, yes, farts. This unfortunate fate is not unique to sprouts. All their relatives in the Brassica family contain GSLs. That's why broccoli, cauliflower, kale, and cabbage can also taste a bit bitter and send out some sulfury stink as they cook. However, because sprouts are young, actively growing parts of the plant, they have particularly high concentrations of GSLs. And the particular GSLs they contain are really bitter and can turn into really sulfurous compounds. That's the root of these little balls' terrible, yet totally accurate, reputation. But the lowly sprout has had 2 strokes of good luck in recent years. First, in the late 1990s, Brussels breeders started growing sprouts that had lower concentrations of GSLs, which means less bitterness and less stinky stench. These sprouts also had higher sugar levels. And not only do we humans simply love sugar, the extra sweetness also helped mask some of the sprouts' remaining bitterness. So the sprouts you're eating today are chemically quite different from those that were on your plate a few decades ago. The second stroke of luck for sprouts is that in about the same time frame, cooking trends have changed. For a bunch of reasons, we're boiling and steaming less and roasting and sautéing more. And these methods create much tastier sprouts for a few reasons. First, because dry heat tends to break down GSLs in a somewhat different way than cooking them with water does. It creates a mix of volatiles that's far less farty. Second, when you roast or sauté sprouts, you have a bit more control over how much they cook. Really delicious sprouts tend to be just barely tender. They're at this tipping point where many of the GSLs have broken down, which reins in the bitterness, but they aren't broken down so far that the sprouts have entered that super stinky territory. Plus, the caramelization you get from roasting or sautéing sprouts helps too, since that additional flavor and sweetness can help mask any remaining bitterness. In my mind, this combination of a little bitterness, a little earthiness, a little sweetness, a little fat, plus a little acid and a little umami is really amazing, especially compared to this. But if roasting isn't your thing, you can also try other ways of preparing sprouts, or any brassica really, to experiment with how much their GSLs break down and what they break down into. You might stumble across something you really like. Also try different varieties and at different times of year. Where and how brassicas are grown, and even how they're stored, can change their GSL ratios and overall concentrations. And if after all that you're still a die-hard sprout hater, look inwards. Thanks to their genes, some people are just really sensitive to the bitterness of particular GSLs. And in that case, just feel good that you're leaving more of those tasty little balls for the rest of us.